Hello, hello. Welcome to the Wellness on Purpose podcast, where our intention is to provide you with impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. This podcast shares insights to current health trends with industry and brand leaders in the health and wellness world. This podcast is brought to you by Joanne's Place Health Foods from Peterborough and Lindsay, Ontario. My name is Marissa Lachlan. I'm a holistic nutritionist and functional lab practitioner. I've been working alongside Joanne's Place for the last 8 years, and I'm so excited to continue to be your host for this podcast. This year on the podcast, we have some incredible guests lined up. We'll be talking about cognitive health, digestive health, mitochondrial and energy support, sun-safe skincare, how to prevent BV, fertility, IBD, iron deficiencies, hormones, and so much more. If you want to be the first to know when a new episode is dropped, be sure to go over to your preferred platform, follow our page, and then also go over and find us on social media. We're going to be releasing information there as soon as a new episode drops. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so stoked for today's episode because we are talking about one of my absolute favorite topics, gut health. If you know me, you know that is the one thing I will talk days upon days upon days on because it is really the foundation of your health. Also, gut health is what really led me to my career as a nutritionist because I had a lot of imbalances in my digestive and gut health, and I was also diagnosed with celiac disease. I've suffered with acne, so many different skin conditions, and all of that stems from the gut. So I love talking about the gut. It's the primary focus in my practice, and I think it's one of the most important aspects of your health and wellness journey is making sure you have a good digestive system function and a flourishing gut microbiome. So I have asked a previous guest who I also know is in love with talking about gut health and digestive function to be on the podcast today to help me talk to you about some important information. So Dr. Briana Lutz, she is a brand educator and medical advisor of St.Francis Herb Farm, and she's also a naturopathic doctor. And she joined us last year on the podcast to talk about the importance of building immunity year-round, and that episode was phenomenal. We had such great feedback from it, and it's really important to go back and listen to that because immunity needs to be built year-round, not just during cold and flu season. So in case you missed it, I will leave that in the description below. Anyways, today's episode, I've asked Briana to join us again to share her knowledge on digestive health and specifically formulations that have been created to really optimize digestion. So this could either be a digestive bitter and then a digestive enzyme. And these are two very different products and they have two very different purposes. So we're going to talk about what that will be, but we're also going to talk about things that impact your gut health, what the difference is between your gut health and your digestive function, and why we need to focus on both of them and not just kind of categorize it as one. And then we're also going to be debunking some TikTok trends that we think as professionals you need to stay away from. So that part is really important, and I really want to share that information with you. So let's get into it. Hello, Briana. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for coming back. And I've asked you to come back and join us today to talk again on the podcast, but this time in specifically around digestive health. And this is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about because it really is the foundation of our health. And there's so much information out there right now about gut health and your gut microbiome and trying this product or that product or specific diets. And we're going to get into all of that information today. But I really want to ask, TikTok, are you a fan or are you not a fan?
I'm a fan. I think that the whole aspect of like gatekeeping and like people sharing information is really important because I think information is very empowering. I think though that there are some trends that don't have a ton of fact necessarily behind them. So I think us as healthcare providers might need to have a bigger presence on TikTok to debunk some of these different trends or kind of myths that are going around on social media.
Oh, I completely agree. I'll admit I'm like a big TikToker. It's where I spend most of my time in terms of like we'll say quote unquote market research, but also to like understand the type of content that's being released, because it can be very fun and entertaining. It can be very educational, but there is a lot of information out there that is very, you can tell, driven by sales, driven through, influence and marketing and things. And I think it's really important to start to kind of dig through some of that information, provide our, listeners on here, but also people who are on social media with the right information, because I think when it comes to your health, it should be coming from a professional side, not just a sales side. So I hope that we can kind of cover all that in today's episode of Speaking to Digestive Health. So before we get into all of that, I want to know if you've been scrolling lately and you've been seeing some of that information come up on this app, what is like the latest health trend that you've seen where you're kind of like, okay, what is going on here? Or give your head a little shake, or like feel like you want to like jump into the comments and be like, no, this is actually the right information.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple, and I would say one trend that's really going around right now is parasite cleanses, and people using some pretty abrasive herbs. And like I'm obviously, for me, I'm a practitioner who has a lot of reverence around herbs, and I think they're super powerful. I think that they should be used in a skillful way. Like, definitely plant medicine is the medicine for the people, and I think that there's really safe ways to incorporate plant medicine into our daily lives. But there are some herbs that demand a bit more respect, in the sense of like, not everybody needs to do a parasite cleanse, but I think that is something that is trending definitely on TikTok.
I have to like piggyback on that parasite one, because it's actually very alarming to see how many people have given into that trend, because there is so many ways, or sorry, there's so many different parasites and bacteria and, different types of yeast that could be the real root cause, or I guess we'll say like contributing to your symptoms. And unless you're using the right product or the right herb or whatever that might be to actually treat it, it could be this vicious cycle where you go and try a parasite cleanse, but it's not actually targeting the right thing you need to work on. And then you feel great for like 3 weeks, and then you go back to this. It's like this, it's just like yo-yo dieting with some of these supplements. It's just a constant cycle. And I think with parasites in colon and gut health in particular, you've got to figure out what the root cause is that's going on for that. So working with a practitioner is so important. But obviously, we know the marketing world and also people's experiences, them sharing them on social can definitely drive people to try these products. So hopefully in today's episode, we can kind of get some of those trends clarified and just like the real information that we want to share with our listeners so they can actually optimize their digestive health. Now, digestive health, I really want to start by clarifying what it is in terms of like gut health and what we're talking about. And I want to hear like your side of this, but this is the easiest way that I kind of have wrapped my head around it. When I'm referring to digestive health, I'm referring to like the process of digestion and absorption. It's really the movement and the enzymatic function of our gastrointestinal system. And then when I refer to the term gut health, yes, it does include digestion, but I'm mostly focusing on like the environment of the gut and the integrity of the gut. So like the gut lining, your gut microflora, bacteria, things like that. Would you describe it that way as well? Or is there another way that you can kind of explain, as much as they're the same thing, they're so different as well?
Yeah, I think like sometimes I use these interchangeably, but I think it's also just like in conversation. But I think the way that you're creating that distinction is really important. But again, when we talk about these two distinct parts, we also know that they have such a mutualistic relationship, right? So it might be that you have enzymatic deficiency, or there might be a component of your digestive process that then triggers or worsens your gut health, right? So your gut lining, or even the microbiome that you're talking about. So I think the distinction is important, but again, understanding that there is this huge mutualistic relationship between both of those terms.
Okay, exactly. Now, we're going to kind of focus more on the digestive function, although that kind of falls under both of those categories, gut health and digestive health. But I want to talk specifically today about how we can really optimize the process of digestion, so that we can, live, we'll say, a healthier life. So, why is an optimally functioning digestive system so important?
Mhm. An optimally functional digestive system is so important because it's related to every single system in our body, right? It's related to our blood sugar and regulation. It's related to our hormonal system. It's related to our nervous system function, simply because that is our way of extracting nutrients, right? So every single cell in our body is going to need those different nutrients. And so if we have impaired digestion, we know that we're probably not absorbing those nutrients that are key for all aspects of health. And I think that old phrase of like, you are what you eat is less important, because you are what you absorb is, I'd say, of utmost importance when it comes to understanding how nutrition and how our cells are becoming nourished. It's what we're absorbing, not necessarily what we're eating, although of course that's important.
Yes, absolutely. So, how would someone know if their digestive system was sluggish, or they maybe aren't really digesting and absorbing those nutrients properly?
Mhm. One aspect that we look at is definitely like your bowel health or your bowel movements. So I talk about poop as being like your daily report card. That should be a daily report card, right? So I think that is like a key sign of that your digestive system is sluggish, is if you're not pooping every single day, right? So I often talk about, especially because a lot of people with digestive issues, it's been so long standing that it's their new normal, right? So sometimes I talk rather about, these are all of the things that could go wrong with your digestive system. This is what an optimal digestive system looks like. There should be absence of bloating, like no heartburn, no indigestion, no stomach pain or cramping or achiness. You should have regular bowel movements. And what does that mean? Again, that you're going every day. They should be like not straining, right? So they should be painless and easeful in a way. And they should feel like completely formed. Like you shouldn't feel like you have to go after you've already had a bowel movement, that they're formed like in one piece, in terms of consistency, and in the absence of mucus, blood, and undigested food, with the exception of corn. I know people always ask me, like, is corn okay? I'm like, yeah, your body can't digest that. That's okay. If it's in your stool, totally fine. But if we're finding like leafy greens or pepper skins or certain things that your body should be able to digest and absorb, then that's a different conversation. And even when we talk about like the consistency of a bowel movement, unfortunately, all my digestive references are to food. So it's basically the size, the shape, and the consistency of a ripe banana. And again, how often should we be going? Definitely every day. But sometimes it's actually like after every like significant meal, right? Because you can think about your entire digestive system as a conveyor belt. So when you have an input, again, you would have an output, right? Because it's triggering this whole kinetic chain within our digestive system. So arguably like 2 to 3 fully formed bowel movements a day. I don't see that a ton in practice. Usually I'm getting people like, for sure, let's get 1 bowel movement a day, if not 2. Like kind of a morning and after work kind of thing, or like with your supper. But again, eliminating every single day.
Yeah, that's big. I think constipation is massively impacting a large population, and it's there's so many factors: stress, the quality of your food, your dietary habits. Like there's so many things, but I think that's a massive problem that I know I definitely see in my practice as well too. So, lifestyle. Is there one specific lifestyle factor that you can recommend to our listeners that could actually optimize their digestive function?
Okay. I'm going to give you 2 actually.
The more, the better.
Yeah. So one that I think is really important, and I think there's some misconception. There's a lot of trending kind of terminology around fasting, and certain benefits with fasting. But I would say fasting between meals is a key way to optimize your gut health and your digestive health. The reason being is that if your digestive system is chronically working to digest that food, it doesn't have an opportunity for repair. Right. So we get caught in this vicious cycle of like stuff is constantly on that conveyor belt. Right. So definitely. And if you're feeling like you need to constantly snack between meals, it's probably that we need to look at your nutrition and we need to look at more substantial meals. I know there's a lot of fear around carbohydrates, but again, carbohydrates could be one of those satiating factors between your meals. Looking at protein intake, fat intake, again, looking to regulate your blood sugar and again, satiate you between meals. I would say the exception to that is nursing moms. Get food in you. Get food in you. I don't care. I don't care about like optimal timing. I don't care about like optimal macronutrients, like literally get food in you. But I would say, yeah, one lifestyle factor, fasting between meals. And again, kind of like that 2-hour window is really important. Again, because this is the phase of how what we call gastric emptying or like intestinal motility actually functions. We have different phases of digestive motility, and we need that time frame to have like a full cycle of like intestinal motility. The second piece is getting into that state of parasympathetic tone, right? So basically into that state of rest and digest. So sitting down to eat a meal, like eating in your car doesn't count. And like taking a couple of breaths before you have a meal, like getting into that headspace, like, okay, I'm going to prepare to like digest. And then your body is more primed to actually like deal and receive that food for optimal digestion. And I think that kind of transitions into some adjuncts or digestive tools that we're going to talk about later on.
Those are two really great points. I love the first one, fasting between meals. I think there was this big shift in the nutrition and wellness world talking about eating so frequently. And I think that this has been such a problem in so many different areas. One, digestion for sure, because you don't get a break. You're constantly trying to secrete those enzymes, which could already be impacted by stress and hormones and things like that. But I love that you said it really tells us that your key main meals are lacking. If we focus on those 3 main meals a day and they're balanced, so carbohydrates, protein, healthy fats, there shouldn't necessarily be a need for snacking in between those times. Like you said, obviously pregnancy, as much nutrients as you can. The other thing I might think of too as an exception would be like, maybe if you were doing like a really, really intense exercise, you might need something like before or after to kind of keep your energy levels sustained. But on an average, really focusing on those 3 main meals. And if you focus on those 3 main meals, you're not snacking as often. I find personally, I'm also not craving as many like sweet things or like that after dinner, like chocolate and things, if I really focus on those 3 main meals.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second point, parasympathetic state. That is like, seems so foreign for people to get into and to actually like rest and digest and eat their food. But love the tip. In the car is not great. At your desk, at a meeting, we can't encourage you anymore, but take your breaks when you need them and actually sit and digest your food. It will make such the difference for sure. Now, piggybacking off both of those being kind of nutrition and food intake focused, I want to know what you think is the number one food that actually weakens our digestive function.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes for me, when I'm investigating somebody's nutrition, it's not necessarily about what they're eating. It's more about what they're not. And I would say, especially when it comes to digestive health, digestive function is fiber intake, especially when we're talking about constipation. For some people, sometimes they're not eating enough food in general. And then the second piece is they're probably the fiber intake is super low, and it's a mixture of like both insoluble and soluble fiber, which have different benefits within the digestive tract. And we know this to be true of like lacking fiber in our diet, that we're at higher risk of like colorectal cancer. My work is a lot of hormonal work, and again, like fiber, diets that are lacking in fiber, we see an increased number of hormonal issues because we're not actually able to excrete or eliminate our hormones properly. So I would say one of those like dietary quote unquote mistakes would be like not having adequate fiber in our diet. If you were like looking to track the amount of like nutrients, or like what would be optimal or even sufficient in fiber intake, like minimum of 30 grams of fiber a day. So people can either, track that in any of those different nutrition apps, or even if they're taking a fiber supplement, which again is one of those kind of TikTok trends, marketing things that I want to debunk. And that also kind of leads into a conversation around pre and probiotics. Which I'd love to elaborate on more. Yeah.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I would say like prebiotics is a marketing term. Okay. We do not need to supplement prebiotics. And in a lot of cases, when we're talking about this in terms of like dysbiosis or an imbalance in gut bacteria, or conditions like SIBO, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, those prebiotics can actually make things worse. And just a side note, like if you're like, yep, I took that probiotic, it made everything worse, get your gut health investigated, because that is a good sign for me. And that's actually a clinical question that I will ask people. So prebiotics is essentially fiber. Okay. And prebiotics is anything that is going to feed our bacteria in our digestive tract. So our bacteria loves fiber. They do a lot of good work with fiber in our digestive tract. And so you don't need to supplement prebiotics if you're getting sufficient fiber from your nutrition, veggies, fruit, certain grains that can support your optimal like microbiome. So I would say that prebiotics is something that I like to debunk.
Yeah, so glad that you touched on that, because I think recently, like on a health and wellness board, an email came out, and one of the top articles that was released by a random company talked about like how bad you need prebiotics. So, so many people have been inquiring at prebiotics and asking about them. And when you come in and open that conversation to them in terms of, okay, how much fiber are you consuming? How much vegetables do you consume a day? They are probably not consuming enough fiber, but when they realize that that's the place that they can start without having to buy another product, they're like, oh, I can do that. I can make an intentional change to add in some ground flax or add in some chia seeds, because it's not very hard. And it's also quite inexpensive to do it that way rather than buying like another type of dietary fiber. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. And same with probiotics. I think there's a time and place for probiotics, but they've been pushed a lot for bloating, gas, indigestion, fixing everything as like a one all. And I think they're great and they have a place, but until you figure out what you're really trying to navigate and what type of, condition your gut health is in, it can be more harmful than it is actually good. So glad that you brought that up. Now, the other category that I see a lot of people ask about, if it's not a probiotic that they're looking for, it's a digestive enzyme or a digestive bitter. So let's talk about those two, because they are not the same thing. And I would love for you to explain what the difference is.
Absolutely. And as an FYI, I could do like our talks just on bitters. Like it is, I think this, I don't want to call it a holy grail, but I think it is such an underutilized tool that seems very simple, but it can have such a substantial impact when it comes to digestion. So herbal bitter, so bitter compounds are essentially like a category of herbs. So it's not necessarily one specific constituent, it's kind of a group or a classification of constituents. So there's different formulations that incorporate different herbal bitters. There's also like nutritional bitters that would have similar effects, but probably on a more gentle scale. Like for instance, dark chocolate. Hey, that's a bitter. like walnuts, endives, like all of these different bitter greens, mustard greens, all of these compounds are looking to support our digestive health. And the way that they're working is there's actually two different ways that it functions. One is that it's stimulating a receptor on your tongue to activate your vagus nerve. So this is basically like the light switch of switching you from that fight or flight into rest and digest. So that sympathetic into that parasympathetic state. So when we're triggering that parasympathetic state, which I talked about, yeah, that's probably from a lifestyle perspective, one of the most optimal ways that you can support your digestion. You can quote unquote biohack with using digestive bitters because you're switching into that parasympathetic state. So when we do that, we are increasing like salivation and then like enzymes in our mouth. We're increasing our stomach acid, we're increasing our digestive enzyme function, we're increasing bile production and flow, we're supporting digestive motility, we're increasing circulation to our digestive tract. So we're actually have blood flow to that area. So when we're absorbing nutrients, blood is readily available there to pick up those nutrients and bring it to where it needs to go. And then it also works on certain like digestive hormones. So ghrelin and leptin, our CCK and gastrin. So all of these other benefits when it comes to our digestive health. Digestive enzymes do one thing. Digestive enzymes will incorporate, oftentimes like a good digestive enzyme is going to have like a component that's going to break down carbohydrates, a lipase that's going to break down fats, and then like a component to break down proteins. And sometimes it'll have like a little bit of HCl or stomach acid in there. And with that being said, it's only useful when you take it, right? So if you have chronic digestive issues and you're struggling with bloating with every single meal, you're going to have to take digestive enzymes with every single meal, right? Or you're going to have to take it chronically because you're not actually fixing the problem. When we're using bitters, it's teaching our body to do what it's supposed to do. And that's like my utmost goal as a naturopathic doctor is to like removing those obstacles and giving your body optimal conditions to function as a well-oiled machine. Like it just does it and I'm hands off and I'm like, perfect, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I would say like that's kind of the digestive enzymes beneficial when you're taking it with a meal. And for that added digestive support, bitters, we're actually looking at, again, all of those digestive functions, but actually strengthening your digestive system and creating more resiliency within your digestive system as well.
Okay, now between the two, if you were to take them, which we're going to talk about dosage in a minute, but if you were to take them before a meal to optimize your digestive function, is one of them going to work faster than the other? Not saying that faster is better, but is faster the right term to use for that? Or like what would you say in terms of immediate relief?
Yep. So a digestive enzyme will probably give you the quickest relief. Some formulations with bitters, like you'll definitely notice in the moment, can be helpful, but sometimes it takes a little bit more time to help support that. And two, with some bitter formulations, it might also give you additional benefits post-digestion. So for instance, with the Canadian bitters formulation, not only does it have bitter herbs, but it also has what we call carminative herbs that look to calm and ease the intestinal tract. So it can help to reduce gas and bloating or cramping, or what we call like kind of colicky-like symptoms. So you kind of have your pre, during, and post benefits versus the digestive enzymes, which will help more just with that digestive process. So for instance, that either say nursing mom or that mom who's like dinner time is absolute chaos, I'm like, take the digestive enzyme. Like we can't get you into that rest and digest. You're just literally trying to cram food into your kid's mouth. Like dinner time is like meal times are really stressful for you. Use the tool. Like, and I can be idealistic and say like use the bitters, but I think in certain situations, I'm like, just use the enzyme. That's okay.
Is there any other situations where you would recommend an enzyme over a bitter?
If there's for any reason that bitters are contraindicated in someone. So for instance, it is not safe in pregnancy. And a lot of bitter herbs have what we call alkaloids in them. And it as a general class of a constituent is we don't use alkaloid rich herbs in pregnancy as a general rule of thumb. So it definitely pregnancy. Also, like we wouldn't use bitters in cases where there's like gastric ulceration or like, but again, I probably wouldn't use a digestive enzyme in that state either. And sometimes if we know that there's a bit of like pancreatic insufficiency or functionally somebody is not creating as much digestive enzymes, then I might use digestive enzymes as a tool. If it's an actual pathology or condition, so exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, which is diagnosable, in that case, we actually need prescription grade digestive enzymes because the on the shelf stuff isn't going to cut it.
Okay. Now, what about if somebody had their gallbladder removed? Would you still recommend an enzyme that would contain bile, or do you think a digestive bitter would be sufficient enough?
Depends on the situation. And I would say sometimes we might start somebody off with a digestive enzyme because potentially they may have impaired like bile production in and of itself, and maybe that caused them to have their gallbladder removed. Ideally, and from the long-term perspective, is that we can incorporate the bitters before each meal, again, to stimulate bile production, because the gallbladder is just responsible for storing bile. It's not responsible for creating it. That's what our liver does. So if we're stimulating the liver before meals, again, the liver can actually create bile, so it's dumped into our intestinal tract to help us digest our fats at mealtime. But again, it might be just based on the person that they might need that additional support with a digestive enzyme if they're not creating enough bile.
Okay, good to know. Now, you kind of quickly touched on this already, but I want to know in terms of a digestive bitter and the benefits around that. Obviously, you talked about pre, during, and post benefits with the different type of herbs for calming and digestion. You also quickly talked about how taking the bitters can put you into more of that parasympathetic state. But what other benefits would digestive bitters have on the body, if there is any?
Oh, there's a ton. That's why I could do like a 1 to 2 hour lecture just on bitters. So I touched upon the first mechanism of how bitters work. So the vagus stimulation and getting into that parasympathetic state. Now, what we're learning more is that we have bitter receptors along the entire digestive tract. So we used to think like the only way that bitters work is tasting it, but we know that even if you just like pop it in water, take it like a shot, you're still going to get benefits. Albeit I would say lesser benefits to actually rolling around on your tongue and tasting it and stimulating that vagus nerve, but it's going to activate those bitter receptors along the entire digestive tract. Now, those receptors we're finding in the thyroid, we're finding it in the placenta, we're finding it. So there's different target sites that we don't even know the effects of, but it's starting to come out in some of the literature. I would say one of the main or a main benefit is like blood sugar regulation. Blood sugar regulation in terms of like glycogen. We have some blood sugar regulation in terms of, again, like our hunger and fullness hormones, so ghrelin and leptin. And then also, again, some of the signaling, so like gastrin, and we're seeing that gastrin is also helping us to repair our digestive tract. And again, that's where that benefit of like strengthening the digestive system is coming from. We're also seeing it being connected to thyroid health as well. So even if people are struggling with metabolism, which the thyroid is responsible for, that digestive piece really plays into that. And again, the bitters can have a role. We're also seeing it from immune benefits. So stimulating those bitter receptors along the entire digestive tract. We're activating surveillance immune system as well. So we can actually improve our immune system function from there. And again, there's more that we're just like uncovering at this point.
So to summarize kind of what you just said about all of the benefits from it, I just want to clarify where my head is at. So In terms of digestive health, I know like the most common signs that people would relate to are that gas, the bloating, indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux, maybe not regular bowel movements for sure, would be a part of that as well. But those are signs and symptoms that people can relate to. But we could also be using bitters as a preventative measure to help really strengthen that gut and digestive health long term, because you said it affects, like the bitters can have such a big impact on so many other things: blood sugar, enzyme production, metabolism, immune health. So really, even if it wasn't that you were struggling with those symptoms, it's still a really beneficial product to take to really improve the integrity of your digestive health for the long term, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just like at the beginning of our conversation, our digestive health is related to every single system in our body. So even if we're not struggling with digestive symptoms, or that there's an issue of something going wrong, in supporting our digestive health further, we can see benefits to, again, all of these other systems.
Amazing. So I want to clarify kind of my stance on enzymes to bitters. So if I was recommending a digestive enzyme to somebody for digestive health, for immediate relief, depending on the situation, I would usually only ever recommend it for a short period of time, 1 month, see how it goes, 2 months, 3 months, because the problem with enzymes for a long period of time is it's doing the work for you. It's like the rest of your organs start to get sluggish and they're not, activated to do the job it's supposed to be done. And you quickly touched on this with bitters, is it is giving the stimulation effect for your organs to do what they're there to do. Now, in terms of a digestive bitter, how long would you recommend for someone to stay on a bitter, and how would you recommend for them to take it every day, at every meal? What's your suggestions?
Initially, like if there's a problem with digestion, we're noticing again gas, bloating, acid reflux, any of those, sluggish digestive system, we might use it more frequently. So we might use it with every single meal. And how I like to dose bitters is about like 10 minutes before a meal. You can put it straight in your mouth, or you can put it in a little bit of water, do it like a shot. I am totally fine with that. And essentially you're priming your digestive system to receive food. Now, the caveat to that is I'm a super dork with puns, but better late than never. And so if you forget to take your bitters before a meal, it is not too late. Okay. You can take it while you're still eating. You can take it after your meal as well, again, because it has the other benefits with digestion. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and still take your bitter. Oftentimes too, if it's not necessarily needing to take it with every single meal, we might do it as like your kind of problematic meal. So a lot of people, it's say dinner, because they're eating, say, a higher volume of food. Maybe they're going out to eat or ordering food in. So they might need a little bit of extra digestive support in those cases. I also find a lot of people kind of invert their day, where their dinner is actually their highest protein, and protein is a really hard macromolecule to break down. So again, they might need a little bit more support. So we're just doing it with dinner every single day. Now, oftentimes they'll almost self-wean. They'll realize they don't even like need it as often. Or we might do that. We're like, okay, let's do bitters more consistently for 2-3 weeks. And then we can scale them back again. If we're reducing from 3 meals, it might be to 1 meal a day. And then it becomes almost like an as needed basis. So for instance, myself, I'll have like a little tiny travel bitters like in my purse or my work bag. So if I'm going out and eating food that I don't usually eat, or say there's a higher fat or that kind of thing, then I have that extra little digestive support to support me. Sometimes we can actually use it as more of like a digestive tonic. So you're doing that first thing in the morning, kind of like a lemon water, or you're doing that like some people do apple cider vinegar. So you're priming your digestive system for the day. So that is an option as well, is that if you are asymptomatic, you don't have any issues with your digestive system, you might take it just first thing in the morning to just prime your digestive system and get it ready for the day.
Okay, good recommendations for taking that. I really like that. Start the morning with it. I haven't done that. Usually when I take my bitters, it would be like before lunch and dinner, because they're my largest meals. Breakfast, I don't really ever find I bloat or feel discomfort, usually because it's quite it's like minimal ingredients, or it's a smoothie or something, but I like starting the day with that. The other time I use bitters, and you can tell me right now if this is a bad idea, but this is what I do.
Yeah.
I take it also before I give like a talk somewhere. Because
Yeah.
I always find after I do like a seminar or a presentation, I just get like so excited and so in the moment. And then at the end, I'm like, I feel like bloated, or I'm just like such on this like high energy level that I just find the digestive bitters just do something for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I tell people you can drop dose it for stress. So you don't need to do as like a high dose like you would for like your digestive function, but even drop dosing on the tongue is beneficial because again, you're stimulating that vagus nerve. You're putting yourself into that rest and digest state, or your more calm component of your nervous system. I keep one in my vehicle when I drive. I am like not a high stress person, but put me in traffic and I will lose my mind. So I'll just like drop dose myself while I'm in my car just to like chill myself out and not be road ragey. Also, if you're talking about with like public speaking, one of the things when you're in a sympathetic state is you stop like salivation in your mouth. So people get like the pasties when they're chatting or doing public speaking. And bitters has that effect that it actually supports like salivary secretion, so you don't get like that dry mouth. So it's actually a really nice option. So I recommend it, and I think that's fabulous you're doing that.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep doing that. You quickly touched on this already in terms of pregnancy, but is there anybody else who maybe should not take bitters?
So, as I mentioned, so pregnancy, active ulceration, or people with like a tendency to like gastritis, or they have like inflammation of the stomach lining. In those cases, we need to use more like soothing herbs and like restorative herbs for like the stomach lining, or medication or whatever that they need for that. There is some information or contraindications, more so in regards to like gallstones, like gallbladder health. I feel super comfortable using it in those situations. There are some cautions, I should say, not contraindications, but cautions with diabetes. And the reason being is that this is a positive drug reaction. Okay. So if somebody is, say, taking insulin, or they're taking something to lower their blood sugar, and they're doing something that is beneficial to lower their blood sugar, this can actually be a not good situation where your blood sugar gets too low, which is actually like way more harmful for you. Same thing, we talk about this with like certain herbs and blood pressure, right? If you're taking the herb to support your blood pressure, it's not that you should stop taking that because you're also on a medication. It might mean that you need a lower dose of your medication, right? So I view that as a caution. So people with diabetes, those kinds of things, just be really conscious of your blood sugar and adjust accordingly, because it can have beneficial impacts on your blood sugar. Those I'd say would be like the main contraindications or cautions with bitters, but for most people, they do quite well.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. And I think with some of those cautions and like health concerns, working with a practitioner or working with your doctor would be obviously best, especially when it comes to medication, to make sure you're modulating your dosage, dependent on what else you might be including in there. So that's great. I just want to circle back to the very beginning of our conversation here, and just kind of reiterate some of those trends that we were talking about, the parasites, overuse of like prebiotics, probiotics, not getting enough fiber, those types of things. Why we also talked about that is because they all are impacted by our digestive health. And so if you're looking to target any of those things, like your symptoms that you might be having, or you're looking to maybe figure out if you do have parasites, or you're using probiotics and not seeing results, this would be a great place for you to start, would be adding in a bitter to see how your digestive system responds to it and what type of relief you can get, because it might be that you're just highly stressed when you're eating, and this product can help get you into that more relaxed rest and digest state. Or it could be that you're not secreting enough of those enzymes, and you can do that with a product like the Canadian Bitters by St.Francis. So just kind of putting that full circle there. Do you have any other comments about trends or any other things that we talked about today?
Yeah. And I don't know if I should necessarily call out a product by name, but it is a product that is trending on TikTok, a very expensive supplement. And the main ingredient is actually psyllium fiber, which you can get at Bulk Barn for like 30 cents. Like it's so inexpensive, but this product is marking it up. And I think this product is like $70. I saw it on sale for 40 during Boxing Day or that kind of thing. And I was like, like what's, because it's touting like optimal digestive health. It's touting like significant weight loss, and it's literally psyllium fiber. So like if you're looking at like certain products and marketing trends, look at the ingredients, right? Because I think a lot of it's just packaging. A lot of it's just packaging, and also to contextualize products and that kind of thing too, even with the bitters, because people are like, well, Canadian bitters is an option. What about other digestive bitters? I find a lot of the other digestive bitter formulations on the market to be either incorporating laxatives or being laxative heavy, or like bowel dependent. So what I like to distinguish between the Canadian bitters and some other bitter formulations is that they're non-habit forming and they don't have laxative or stimulant laxatives within the formulation. So you're not creating a reliance on it versus some of the other products that you may. So I just wanted to make that distinction. But yeah, I would say that like be a savvy consumer, like don't get greenwashed, like read your ingredients, bring them up with your healthcare providers too, right? Like, so I've had really good conversations in my office. I am never the type of person who will be like, I don't want you to Google, or dismiss books or trends on TikTok that people are seeing. Bring those to your healthcare providers. I've had multiple people like, I saw this on TikTok. Is this true? And it creates a really good conversation. And if your health provider isn't willing to have a conversation and be open-minded and listen to your concerns or your questions about certain things, they're not your provider, right? And if like my ego has like, I don't need to do that. I'm not this like dogmatic practitioner. Like you need to be able to be like, is this true? Is this beneficial for me? Sometimes I'm like, yeah, you can try that. Or I'm like, if it's not, this is why it's not beneficial for you, or this would actually be harmful for you. So it just creates a better conversation.
I love that. And I think the message lately, at least that I have seen and been having, is it's okay to find another provider, whether that is in the healthcare system, whether it's a nutritionist, a naturopath, whomever that is. It's okay to get a second opinion. It's okay to ask questions. In fact, it's encouraged to do so. So I love that. And then, I mean, I might be biased because I work at Joanne's Place, but the other thing that I tell a lot of people is if you don't know exactly what you are buying, do not buy it online. Walk into a store and actually talk to somebody about that product. Come into Joanne's Place, go to the company, like actually have a conversation with somebody who is, face to face with you, or a call or something, to actually get the right information, because you just don't know when you're buying online if it's the marketing that's getting you, is it just the packaging that's getting you, or is it like a legitimate product that's going to make a difference for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I see that either people self-prescribing and they come in and they see me and they're taking 10 to 12 different things, or they're coming from another provider, which I see again a lot in the natural sphere. And I ask people, I'm like, why are you taking this? If you don't know why you're taking something, I love a good audit. Like that is one of my favorite things in practice. I'm like, yep, let's do a supplement recall. Let's do a medication recall. Let's audit what you're taking, because I'm more minimalistic and simplistic in my treatment plans. And if we can get you taking maybe 2-3 things, if anything, then I think that's a fabulous place to be.
I love that. That's so, I'm the same. I love to like try to really streamline what the most important things are to take. And there's like seasons for taking things, right? So yeah, all amazing things. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your views on the TikTok trends, helping me debunk some of that information, and then really sharing the wealth of information on digestive bitters. I think Like you said, so many people could benefit from taking bitters. So if you're listening to this right now and thinking, I want to learn more, come into the Joanne's Place, any of our locations. We have the St. Francis Canadian bitters on our shelves. And I know a lot of our team uses these on a regular basis. So they'd be happy to talk about the ingredients and their experiences and things like that. So pop in and visit our location. And if you want more information on today's episode, I will leave a description about the products we talked about in the show notes on our website as well too. So I want to thank you so much, Briana, for joining us today on the podcast. It's been such a pleasure. And I really look forward to connecting with you again in the future. And when we do, bring your favorite TikTok trends and we'll go over those.
I love it. I'll save them all. And thank you so much for having me again. It was a pleasure.
If you're still here, thank you so much for tuning in today's episode. If you want to learn more about the topics that we covered in today's episode, as well as the products, you've got two options. You can head over to our Joanne's Place website to review the show notes. We'll leave that in the description below. Or you can pop into one of our Joanne's Place locations and talk to one of our amazing staff. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, go over to your preferred platform, follow our page, and then find us over on social media so you're notified as soon as a new episode is released. That's all for now, and we'll see you in the next episode.